So hello guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, the nearly shredded to the T guy who started his contest prep just 5 days ago. And I'm on a run, and on the other end, it is the super fat piece of shit who's still eating tons of food and drinking a lot of mass gainer shakes because, yeah, we all know you're getting very much jacked from that. That is Steve Hall.
It's all about the mass gainer shakes.
It's all about the mass gainer shakes.
Secret.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I was just thinking, actually, how if I just chop out that mass gainer shake and my intra workout shakes.
You're cutting already.
I cut like 2,000 calories. And I was just like, this is easy. A huge deficit, just like, boom.
How much are you paying for one container? How much is it? Because I never bought a mass gainer shake because, yeah.
I can't remember the price, but I think each serving, which is like 1,000 calories, comes to like £1. I think there's like 16 servings in the thing or something, or maybe like £1.50 or something. Yeah. I mean, I didn't focus too much on it because I was just like, I just need the calories.
When you really think about it, something like whey is so cheap if you really think about it for the amount of calories that you're getting, for the amount of protein that you're getting. So yeah, if you really break it down, especially when you buy an entire box, which I hardly ever do, of 5 kilograms, the bag is just too inconvenient to store somewhere. I'd rather buy two 2.5 bags, even if it's a little bit more expensive. But that 5 kilogram, I had it once and it was super inconvenient, especially finding the spoon in there, or that like the measuring cup rather.
So you've started contest prep. How much have you lost in your first week?
It's now.
Has it been a week? No.
Yeah, no, not entirely. So I started here on Saturday. Now is Thursday. And I've already lost 3 kilograms.
Damn. So that's like £7.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. I mean, I know my body, and this is what I said like last week already, that this is what is going to happen. I said it also over on the social medias. And I know my body that well that in the first initial days when I'm transitioning into a cutting phase, I'm dropping like tons, and same way goes around into a gaining phase, and that can be so disheartening. I don't have an issue with going into a cutting phase and seeing the weight drop that significantly, right? It's kind of a motivational boost, and I'm more so rational in that sense. But when you're coming out of a cutting phase and then it comes back up like 3 to 4 kilograms in the first like 5 days, then you're just like, holy shit, what is going on? Am I now already in such a high surplus? Most of the time it is just like that tissue being regained, right? But yeah, this is what is happening right now. So
I have it with some clients where they will just gain, like you put them into a diet break for a week after they've been dieting, and it's like they just gain like 5 pounds. It's just like crap, but you know it's going to come all the way down and more off in the first week coming out of it. It's just knowing yourself in that sense, because it can be really scary when that happens.
This is something I've noticed for myself, but also ever since I'm working like as a PT. So I don't know if that's something you've ever thought about. And this is also something I wanted to actually ask someone like Eric or Mike when they've been on our podcast for a Q&A, but I never actually did ask them. This is, do you think that people who have been more obese or on the heavier side of things in the past see a more significant discrepancy of weight regain or weight loss during that times? Because this is my observation. It could be that I'm observing that a little bit wrongly, but I have the feeling that with the people I'm working with who have been either on the obese side of things or who are coming, or just like who have dropped 60 pounds over the past 2 years or so, that they are seeing much higher fluctuations on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, but especially in a transitional period between cutting and gaining.
Interesting. I would say there's one person that comes to mind with the kind of the big weight gain, like the big weight shifts. And I'm not aware of him being huge before, but I do know he was definitely overweight by like I don't know, he'd probably fall into like the obese category in terms of like BMI and everything like that. So yeah, potentially. I don't think I've experienced it enough to say either way. Do you have any reasons you think that might be the case for people like fat cells that stick around?
Yeah,
and
I mean,
fill up and lose?
Exactly. I have my theories about it. Maybe it is the fat cell amount, that because fat cells also hold on to a little bit of water then. But I don't know if that's enough, because the amount of water that is then being retained in conjunction with something like glycine, for example, is like marginally. And the thing is with the theory about the whoosh effect, people think then that the water is being drawn into the fat cells, but it has never been shown. And I asked Miguel at some point if he couldn't make a summary about that, or a presentation or a video about the theory behind the whoosh effect, and whether there is actually some evidence showing something similar, because that goes into a biochemistry lesson that is too far out of my scope of practice, and also out of my knowledge, because I think that there is a lot then that you need to understand in regards to cell physiology, which I don't am 100% comfortable in. So maybe it has something to do with the fat cells, but I think it's just, too far out of my understanding at the moment when it comes to the entire physiological process that may happen, or may be the case for those heavier individuals, or formerly heavier individuals.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it was Lyle McDonald who I found the whoosh effect from, and I think he may have even actually came up with that phrase, like the whoosh effect, from dieting. And it was only maybe a year ago or year and a half ago where I then saw someone kind of commenting and being like, well, this actually has no actual evidence behind it, which is interesting, because at least anecdotally it seems to happen in some way. It's just whether or not that's the actual thing that's happening, whether there's something else that's happening. So I guess it still has applications, but it's just the understanding behind it was maybe a bit wrong. Or could be a bit wrong.
Totally.
So yeah, well, how do you look? Do you look visibly very different?
I mean, I'm dropping a lot of water in the first initial days, as you can tell by the drop of 3 kilograms, which is definitely not fat mass in those initial days. And you can see a little bit more definition here and there, but nothing to shout home about. I mean, I'm
looking flat and stringy.
I assume that next week, by the end of next week, I will be in that in-betweener zone where you're flat, but still you're fat, and thus you look the worst ever. And I expect this is going to happen here next week, and it's unfortunate because we are going to record a couple of things in the gym, which is
I'll be
the
looking
blob is
like
there,
a cloud.
the blob.
Yeah, I'm the blob, and then you're the sack of potatoes or whatever. I don't know what the look will be, and then we'll have actually Harry will be nice and lean, so at least he'll be holding the fort a little bit.
He would save us. He will save the day.
Actually, I've got
from the
it should
blobs.
be happening from the blobs. It should be happening. It's not exactly exciting, but I've got I think it's like a photo shoot or something tomorrow with Deload, doing just some shooting in it. I have to get to like Orpington Muscle Works gym, and they're doing some bits there. So I'm just like
posing trunks.
I'm like, what am I wearing for this? Can I wear long sleeves and trackies?
You're going there with the posing trunks.
Posing trunks,
just like because.
It's always, I've seen some competitors pose in their posing trunks in their off season, and for some people, I think it looks like, I don't know how I feel about it. Some people I'm like, oh my gosh, like it just looks so wrong. But other people I'm like, actually, I think the posing trunks kind of help the look a little bit. Yeah. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Get the same.
Do you own any yet, actually?
No.
You've got a thong.
Back in 2017 when I was working with Jeff, he basically said like, okay, you're first getting your first posing trunk when you are like 4 to 8 weeks out, because then you kind of know your size in the mid area.
Yeah. Right, I got you.
Right. So otherwise, especially someone like me who's carrying most of his body fat around the midsection, I always have a lot of handles and a lower body fat lower abdomen body fat. And yeah, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to get any kind of posing trunks when, after all, they are just like hanging there, and I don't know, I lose them while I'm walking and posing. I mean, it will maybe that will give you some additional points, maybe not.
It's reminded me of, well, first of all, I wonder if some competitors then have off-season posing trunks, because surely they're too big, they're too small at that stage. I can only imagine wearing mine.
Or it's like you always only have your normal wardrobe, and you go in there and you wear them in the deepest off season. Then they are very snug, and then you wear them in the deepest competition season as well, and then you just look like, I don't know, also a bag of potatoes, but like super loosely fitting. I don't know. Do you know My Hero Academia? My Hero Academia, I mean.
Not sure.
It's an anime. It is. It's very, very, very cool. So, as you know, I'm into anime and manga and all that kind of stuff. So, My Hero Academia is a young boy, and the entire world now develops like superhero skills. This has some kind of genetics things, right? All of a sudden now the entire population starts to develop some superhero skills, but only 80% of the population. Some don't. And he's really into superheroes, right? And he's unfortunately someone who doesn't get any kind of superhero skills. And then there is this one guy who's the most famous and strongest superhero there is, who's called All Might. And All Might is super jacked, super big, super muscular, right? But he's losing his skills because he was once hurt, and now he can only stay in that shape of being that muscular and strong for only like 3 hours per day. And when he then shrinks, he's that super skinny and super thin guy. And he's wearing like, his clothes are like exactly what I was describing. When he's jacked up, they are just like too snug, like fathers and son clothing snug. That's the style, right? And when he shrinks down, it's just like 90s baggy style. This is what it is. So yeah, long anecdote.
This is also it just reminded me of actually, that sounds like a good program. There was something, I can't remember, there's something I was watching on Amazon Play. It was to do with superheroes. I can't remember. There's only been one series. Can't remember what the hell it's called.
Doom.
It's good. No, it wasn't Doom. It was
Doom Squad. No, Doom Squad is called, right?
It was like if superheroes were like employed and marketed, and the main bad good superhero was Homelander.
No idea.
Someone will know. Their comment below.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what was I going to say? My anecdote was on stage. I was at a show. Well, I think it was the MPA finals in 2017 with Charlotte. I don't know why I need to say with Charlotte, but anyway, there was a guy on stage whose posing trunks were like 2 sizes too small and just about covering the end. You could basically see from the side, you could see like everything, and me and Charlotte were just like, this is inappropriate. He cannot be let on stage like this. They're like child size and he's a fully grown adult, and you could just see pretty much everything. I think he actually won his category.
See, maybe you should try it as well. Like, I mean, dear, but what about you have like, okay, this goes totally the wrong way. What if, so there are two, for females, they have probably heard it, there are 2 types of wieners you need to differentiate between. So one is the blood penis, and second, I don't really know how it's called in English. One is the blood penis, second is the blood penis.
Okay.
Who's getting big once blood is being pushed into the dick, right? And the other one is just like the what's it called in German again? Fuck, I don't even know. But the other one is just like big all the time, but doesn't really get any bigger when blood is being pushed into that, right? What if you just like have the most insane schlong there is, like 30 centimeters straight, and you are on stage and posing
tuck
trunks.
Under.
I mean, what are you doing then? I mean,
you'd have to tuck under. You couldn't tuck up. It wouldn't work. Oh God. It sounds like grower, not a shower.
Yeah.
The first one, and then the other one, I don't know. That's just huge. What was I going to say? But another anecdote is I bought, for some reason, in my head, I was like, oh, the more I can show off, the better. So I bought small trunks. My previous trunks were medium. But these small ones, I ended up like one of the female, I don't know, just one of the tanners backstage was like, something's hanging out. It's like my bollock was just hanging out. They must, well, obviously they see everything, the tanners. Yeah. And once you are backstage, it's just like, you don't care. It's just like a changing room and everyone's just naked.
Bodybuilding it's not that is such bad, a weird sport. Bodybuilding is such a weird sport. Unbelievable, eh?
And you can get away with just like showing your bare glutes and just putting a sock on, and then it's acceptable to post that on social media.
Yeah. Or not. I mean, Eric once got very much flack for that, where he lost a bunch of followers, and then he had the urge to then apologize publicly for it. I mean, ooh, shit.
I guess he's a big like academic, and people who follow him who aren't into the sport, so I can see completely. I don't feel it crosses a bit of a border for me. I don't know. It becomes a bit too exposed to just post a sock pic. It's just I kind of get it, but it was.
That's why you're just sending it to me privately.
Just send it to you. Just slide into my DMs if you want the sock pic. It's fine.
Mate, we are rambling again. Do you want to give the audience a little bit of a quick overview of what it was going on in your past week?
So, has anything really happened? The only thing of note that happened was last Friday. Just the symptoms that I've been feeling for the last months of fatigue and nausea were just peaked that day. But fortunately, and it seems every day this happens, it kind of subside through the day, especially by the evening. I tend to feel pretty good or like well, so I can actually eat, like that's the only time I eat a whole food meal and actually eat some vegetables and stuff like that. Otherwise through the day it's all liquids, which is weird actually, but for me that's normal. So I actually managed to get my training in because I was a bit nervous I wouldn't be able to even train, and over the few days it's been fine. I'm keeping actually a tracker now of like my fatigue and nausea in the morning, like a rating out of 10, just to have an awareness of what could be impacting it. And at the moment, I still don't know. And I booked in with a GP who I'll be seeing tomorrow morning. They'll probably have to refer me, I imagine, to a specialist. I don't know what. I've had various suggestions. People messaged me saying it could be, I think it was GERD, like acid reflux and stuff like this. But I've not experienced any of the main symptoms. Like I'm actually not being sick. I haven't got like excessive bloating or stomach pain or any issues like that. So I think it's kind of like my body's just calling out to diet, but I don't know. That's just my inkling because that's what's happening, and there's no obvious signs of anything being wrong. So apart from that, like training's still been going okay. I would say the fatigue and the kind of feeling of sensation of nausea has actually impacted my training volume. I just feel more fatigued generally. So I know my numbers in terms of a number of hard sets is down, but my performance is still creeping up. So I'm happy enough to keep going. I don't know if I'll have to end up deloading a bit earlier. Part of me kind of wants to just sack it in a little bit and just like maintain for a little bit and then start the diet, because I don't know that's the answer, but nothing else is really helping at the moment. So we'll see. But yeah, no, nothing else exciting has happened. I don't think there was anything exciting over the weekend or this week. No, pretty boring.
How's the dog?
The dog?
Yeah, I saw that over on YouTube, because we are sharing the same YouTube account. Every once in a while, when there is like videos popping up for recommendation, I know what Steve has watched. And this time, so last week was a lot of like teaching a dog how to yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. So, oh my God, dogs, they're smart, but they're so dumb. It takes so long to teach them the smallest things, like lie down, or like we're trying to sit pretty is a really nice trick because they like come up on their back, on their heels and like do this. So that's a really nice trick. But yeah, hopefully she's going to be good. She's not been barking at night as much. She tends to bark like once and then you just tell her to shush and she does.
Yeah. And then you beat her.
But no, Ada is generally getting better. My favorite thing to do with her at the moment is she likes socks, and I've got one sock I just let her destroy, and I'll just drag it around on the I'll like put it around on the carpet and go in a circle motion, and she will just run around in circles like crazy, and I'll stop and she'll keep going for a couple more, and I'm just like, this is
so cruel, because you just mentioned in the conversation we had before about putting a sock over your penis and getting tan, and now you're telling me that you take one sock and give it to the dog and just chase it around in a circle.
It loves the sock.
It's the penis sock.
Actually, I think I still have. They give you a sock. At least my tanner,
okay.
Nicola Gilbert, gave me a A1. Her company's called A1, and they have socks with their logo printed on. It's brilliant.
Nice.
So I kept
actually
the sock.
A very, very good marketing idea. Like, honestly,
and people take photos and share those socks.
Gosh,
dear.
Yeah. Shall we go into questions then? Because we have a lot of questions this time. So thank you very much, guys. Over in our Facebook group, revivestronger.com, lots and lots of questions. So we will not get to every single one of them, but we will try our very best. So Brett Hadley asks, is there anything better than Lebkuchen? And just to answer that very quickly, yes, there is. It is potatoes with quark. And God. Brett will love that answer. I know that. So Tom Paul, or do you want to say something about it as well?
The only thing I have to add is I found Lebkuchen, like I was big on Lebkuchen, but I found some, bought them, and I ate some, but at the moment they're not even doing it for me. So I can't.
Have you ever tried? So because I think that the ones I'm talking about are more like a rare thing in the UK, because I've been tagged here recently from many people over on Instagram when it comes to buying like Lebkuchen, and it is like the classic Lebkuchen what everyone is buying. Totally all right, but they are not as delicious as the ones I'm referring to. The ones I'm referring to are covered in chocolate. They are not really that high in fat, like 100 grams, 10 grams or so nothing crazy. And they are covered in chocolate, so you can get them with dark chocolate or normal chocolate. And also it's like, it comes in the shape of a pretzel, a star, and a heart. If you find those, they are the ones I'm referring to. Without any kind of filling. No
filling.
Without any kind of filling. And they are freaking amazing. And I'm a big fan of something like brownies, when they are like, I don't know, that moist chewy, texture, chewy, and they are like a little bit like brownies. So
I don't think I at least haven't. I know of ones where they're chocolate covered hearts with like an apricot filling, but I'm not aware of ones without the filling.
Yeah,
I have to try.
It's disgusting, to be honest.
Find them at some point.
I'm not a fan of chocolate coupled with some fruit stuff. Don't like it. Anyway, enough about that. Tom Paul, is it worth mini cutting to get in one more planned meso of massing, or just get a little over fat and go into a full cut after?
I would say this was interesting because in the group there was recently a question of like, what's the shortest productive mass? And we had a discussion off air about it, and kind of came to the conclusion of, I think for both of us, that in the terms of if you've done a successful long mass, and this is like the final part of that massing macro cycle, we'd say maybe 2 mesocycles worth. So I wouldn't mini cut to do one massing mesocycle unless there's a specific context for it. I think that's a bit too short. If that one mini cut isn't getting you back into an extended macro cycle of massing, like at least like 2, 3, 4 mesocycles worth of massing, I think you're better off maybe doing a maintenance period, primer phase after your extended mass, and then extended cut to get nice and lean to buy you much more time.
No, amazing answer. So Aditya Savant, can you deload body parts / muscle groups as opposed to have a normal deload? If systemic fatigue is not too high, but possibly a lift or muscle group progress has plateaued? And if yes, how would you go about this for a major muscle group like chest and for something like biceps? Cheers.
Cool. So I think I don't like deloading individual muscle groups generally, because I think you're not getting the systemic fatigue reduced. And so if you end up doing that, like I imagine I'm 4 weeks in, I'm just going to deload my legs or my quads and continue everything else. It's like, well, 2 weeks later or a week later, everything else is going to need a deload, and then you're still training with your hamstrings, and then that all just gets a bit complex, and you're not fully getting rid of the systemic fatigue, and that's going to impact your training performance overall. So I think generally it's something to deload everything and learn for next time not to overshoot whatever muscle group that might be. And maybe in some scenarios you can do like light sessions. So you might just do, maybe you overshot 1 week on a certain exercise or for a certain muscle group, and maybe you just do like a couple of light sessions to keep you going overall. But that's the only kind of ways I personally like to do things.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that he brought up is systemic fatigue. And when it comes to the physique, what we are always doing is accumulating fatigue. It's just what it is, right? And you have to imagine that fatigue never drops entirely from 1 week to the next. So there will always be a carryover into the next week. So week 1, you're doing not as much volume, not as much intensity, but fatigue is creeping up just a little bit. Now you have a couple of days from the previous sessions where it's dropping down just a little bit, right? But it's never going to zero once again. So you're starting the second week with that accumulated fatigue already. This just creeps up and up and up and up to a point where it's then, even though if you were to deload one body part, the systemic fatigue will still probably stay as high as it has been before. So what you're doing is basically you just add even more and even more systemic fatigue up to the point where you simply can't recover from that anymore, and then you're forced to take a deload because the systemic fatigue overall is simply too high, even though you took like a deload on 1 or 2 body parts here and there. Thing is also that you always have to take into consideration that nothing is isolated. You can't just hit the side delts or so. Only that. There's always some other muscle groups involved in that as well. So for example, your example here, when you're training the chest, or let's just say you're taking a deload on the chest, right? The chest will still be probably involved in other movements as well. Of course, not to the extent where it gets the stimulus of growth, but still just a little bit. Maybe it can recover, but still it is not like a deload is, where the systemic fatigue in contribution to that is also then being reduced, right? So besides that, I would also encourage you to take just a light week, just out of psychological reasons, and secondarily also for something like connective tissues. If you always go hams and balls to the wall, even if you're just taking like a deload on one body part, probably you're still working at such a high amount of your capacity, overall capacity, that connective tissue will maybe also be, the recovery aspect of the connective tissue may be impaired as well.
Cool. I have nothing to add. Nice.
Because stress is still high. So, yeah. Michael Wilson, in a mesocycle, when working across weeks from 4 ARIA to 0 ARIA, in that final week, how many sets are taken to true 0 reps in reserve? How do you choose what exercises are taken to 0 ARIA? I would assume it wouldn't be possible. Sorry for that. I'd assume it wouldn't be plausible to take every set of every exercise in that week a failure point. Thanks.
Cool. So, yeah, in that week before deloading, quite often I will program 1 to 0 reps in reserve. So if I end up leaving 1 rep in reserve, or if a client leaves 1 rep in reserve, that's fine. If they end up going to 0 reps in reserve, that's fine. That's kind of where I'm moving towards, and that would be for every single set on every exercise. And I think it's safe to go to 1 rep in reserve for people who are healthy and fine on every movement. But for example, on a big compound lift, for like a squat or an RDL, a hip hinge movement, any hip hinge movement, a deadlift, I would never take that. Like if I thought I had another rep, but I wasn't 100% sure, I wouldn't bother ever taking it there. Whereas for isolation movements, for maybe even like dumbbell press, where I know I can just drop them to the side, or if I'm on a bench press and I've got a spot, maybe I'll take that rep just to try and get it. But in general, rule of thumb, big compound lifts, 1 rep in reserve. If I'm not completely convinced I can get another rep, I'm certainly not going to go for it, because the risk of injury, the risk of reward is just, risk to reward is not there. And even now, we don't have any data to say we need to go to 0 reps in reserve or failure. But on isolation movements where, like a cable curl, where the worst thing that's going to happen is you drop it to the floor and you're just really fatigued, I don't see any reason why you can't take that to 0 reps in reserve. And if you wanted to, you could just leave it to the final set. And again, there's nothing won necessarily by going to 0 reps in reserve, apart from by taking it there, you know where your actual limit is. Whereas if you never quite go to that point, you maybe never know exactly where your limit is. But on the big compound lifts, I just don't think it's worth ever really trying to find that limit.
Exactly. It would have been exactly my answer as well. Only thing I would add is, in the last week of a mesocycle, volume is probably also the highest. If you were to go to or prescribe a set from 1 area or so from the initial first set on a heavy compound lift, this will definitely then be taken to failure at some point. Like, let's just say that you have 4 sets of squats and they are 1 area. So the first initial set. After that, I always let the area fall wherever it falls, as long as I am in that repetition range. So let's say you're already hitting to failure on the 3rd set. Now you are supposed to take a 4th set. So go there. What do you imagine the rest of the workout would look like? Not very productive. So going to failure also impacts other exercises that come after. And especially when it then comes to something like heavy compound lifts, I try to get my volume in there primarily at the beginning of the workout, not go to true 0 area, and then later on to accumulate a little bit more volume. And also where it is then possible to go to 0 area, I take it there. But more so, it is reserved for isolation movements, single joint movements, where the risk is lower. And then most of the time, primarily in week 4, where it is absolutely all right to accumulate that much fatigue because the deload is there. So yeah, you better give it your all in that given week.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know about you, Pascal, but I just, especially like true failure, I just know if I can make a rep or not. Like on some movements, I just know it. Like I just know if I was to go, if I was to get it, it would be incredibly lucky and my form would break down.
Totally. You remember like 1 or 2 weeks ago when I told you about the incline pressing, where it was just like declining very rapidly. For example, incline pressing is a movement like this. So you brought up like, if I don't have a spotter. I assume though that you never have a spotter.
Oh no, I don't.
And the same applies to me as well. I never have a spotter. And it could very well be then on an incline press that the performance is decreasing so quickly that, oh shit, that rep, I thought I had it in me, and now I'm already struggling big time only on that rep, right? And I wouldn't even go there then to consider doing another repetition, what some other people are doing, or even like 2 or 3 repetitions when the spotter is behind me, right? Where the spotter is doing all of the work. To be honest, I never got spotting for hypertrophy, only when it's a security thing or like insurance for you to not be buried under the bar. Due to, I don't know, not being focused or because you don't feel like that on that particular day. We all have those days. But like regularly and normally, I never use a spotter because I think that this is something that is more so reserved for something like powerlifting maybe, where you're dealing with such heavy weights where you simply need to have those because of your own sake and security, because you don't want to be buried underneath like, I don't know, 160 kilograms when you're benching that much and that lays just on your chest or so, right? But for bodybuilding, I can't even recall the last time I failed a lift, like where I had to, like squats, for example, where I needed to drop the weight. Can't even recall that.
The last time I did that was when I put on like 20 kilos too much. I went down and I was like, came up a little bit. I was like, this it's really fucking hard. And I flipped it back over myself. And that's the only time I've ever had to do that. But and I have videos. I think I may have a video on YouTube of me failing squats, just because I didn't really know any better. But I'm the same. Like, I don't know if I discussed it with you or it was at a dinner I went to with some other people who like lifted, and I was like, I can't actually remember the last time I I go to naught reps in reserve, but I just, once I've got there, going past that point, I know when I haven't got another rep in me. I just kind of know it, unless form changes, or something that I could do is on some lifts, you could probably just take lots of breathers and you effectively do like rest pause. That often you can see that happening. Yeah, I'm the same with the spotting. It's interesting because I think, especially for the style of training that we do, where the majority of the time we're leaving some reps in reserve, we're accumulating volume. We shouldn't need a spotter for that because we're not doing like ridiculously heavy loads. It's not, like you said, powerlifting where like technique is huge and it's heavy. It's like, should be relatively comfortable. If you're doing 2 rep in reserve training, you should feel pretty confident about that lift, unless you're like crazy strong. I can see then maybe that's when a spot might be more appropriate. But then I guess if you're someone who has the lower volume, higher intensity approach and you're training to failure all the time, I can see why you'd need a spot. And then it's kind of like, it'll be quite scary to train then without one, because it's like, well, holy shit, like what if it's that one rep can break you? It can't make you, but it can break you. That kind of scenario that you can get into like every session. I guess it's that can be a kind of a bit of a crux in its own way. So it's just interesting because you brought that out.
Yeah. I just recently saw a video of someone doing leg presses, like half reps, and someone else was spotting him. And I was just like, what the fuck are you guys even doing there?
There's a guy in my gym who, he actually, to be fair to him, he never has a spot, but he half reps everything. Yeah. And I'm just always frustrated to watch him because I'm like, this just can't be doing much for you. It's just like, it just looks painful and lots of weight moving around.
Yeah, let's move on to the next one. Not that we are pissing some people off because it's 2019. So when deloading in a lean gaining phase, should you decrease calories to maintenance levels or stay in a surplus and keep the momentum going? Thanks.
I think we've covered this before, haven't we? Deload calories, at least. I think we have.
Yeah. So I mean, just first half, still keep them up there, and then second half, reduce it to maintenance. That's how I like doing it most of the time.
Yeah, likewise.
Ryan Beaver. Oh, he's a supporter. Sorry for that, Ryan.
I should have
read through the questions first. Sorry, Ryan, but here is your question now. Luckily that you didn't really comment here lastly. Oh, I saw that Andrew commented as well. So going to prioritize his question next. So Ryan Beaver asked, I had a profound realization today that I'm deeply in love with Pascal. Whoa, no, that's not what he said. Today that I eat oatmeal with protein shake every day for my first break at work, but I could eat something else if I wanted to. Either of you ever had a habit you started as a good idea, then later realized you were still doing it when it maybe was suboptimal?
It's such a hilarious. Sorry, Ryan. It's like I came to this profound realization that I was eating this meal. I definitely.
I mean, it is like when your habits are actually subconsciously executed. That's why it can be so good to have them when you are dieting, so that you're not really thinking about them anymore or actively needing to force yourself to go out there, right? So yeah, I can definitely see where it's coming from with that one.
Yeah. And I think it's more, I bet there's people who eat food that they're not even remembering or realizing they're eating. It's just like a habit. They just go into the kitchen and they always grab this sweet or whatever it might be. And then they're like, I've been doing this for how long? And no, like my scale weight's been going up, whatever it might be. I don't know if there's, I just know I get, and I'm not looking forward to these habits, but I get a ton of bad habits that start accumulating when I go into contest prep. So the way I eat, I just, after a while, it becomes more and more strange and more robotic. Like right now, I don't eat in a particular way, whereas I know I'll have a systematic way that I eat my oats out of this bowl. It'll just happen. Chewing gum, right now, I don't even think about chewing gum, really. And I know in prep, it will start 1 piece after every meal, and then it will be 2, and then it'll be like a packet a day. And then I'll be like, fuck. Same with like diet drinks. I just get into habits of I always have a diet drink at this time. And I know these sort of habits will start picking up as I get into prep. And some of them are productive and some of them are just necessary in some ways. And other ones, yeah, they frustrate me because I know I'll get into them. But I can't think of anything I'm necessarily doing just, and I don't, and it's suboptimal, or I don't need to do it. Oh,
and
what
I
am I
think
doing?
that when I speak it out loud, you will be like, yeah, that's true. Happened to me as well. Keeping step counts high, like on a day-to-day basis. I did that for a while. Yeah. Just trying, and I've seen it with a lot of people as well, that after a prep or after a prolonged diet, they just keep their steps like at 15 to 20,000 steps, even though they don't really need to. So they are forcing themselves out there. And this is always what I say to a lot of my athletes, like when they are in a gaining phase and they're coming out of a cutting phase where their step count was very, very high, or we needed to actively push that up there, that I don't want them to actively make an effort to go out there and get the steps in. Like, okay, let the steps fall wherever they fall. Maybe have a minimum like of 6,000 or so, just to keep you accountable, so that you're not becoming a I don't know, lazy slob or so. But other than that, don't actively force yourself to get up to a certain amount, like 15,000, which is just like unnecessary for most people. And this is something that a good habit while dieting is going out for walks, and I would even say that it's a good habit in general for general health, up to a certain extent where it then can become a little bit detrimental for your overall progression. Especially someone like you, Steve. If you were to now go out for 15,000, 20,000 steps per day, mate, you would need to eat like 4,500 calories now.
This is something I should mention. So,
oh God,
I'm trying to keep my step count as low as possible. So without ADA, I was down at like 10,000 was where I was like topping out at, or I'd be just under that. If I went to the supermarket as well as the gym twice a day, I'd end up getting to 10,000. Now with ADA, and especially if Charlotte can't do the evening walk, like last night and tonight she's out as well, I have to do that evening walk. So now my step count is getting midweek. And if I have to go to the supermarket as well, so if there's no food in, I think the other night I was at 20,000.
Oh.
And so I'm between 15 to 20,000. And it's just like, fuck, this is making my life
what you should get
much harder than it needs to be.
You know these kind of small devices, cars for more so older people and people who aren't really able and capable of having long distance walks? Or fat people. Fat people are taking that as well. You have to get one of those, right? Like, you're just like driving everywhere. And you can actually use those in the flat as well. So you don't have to get out of that seat anymore.
What's the film WALL-E or whatever it is, where everyone's like obese?
Yeah.
Like in these
things. And everyone is just in their hover seats.
And the other one that you reminded me of was, for a long time, I would, obvious one for me, I'd save lots of calories for the evening because I'd be worried I was hungry. And in addition to that, I'd always have like massive salads with meals and just stuff myself every meal, scared of being hungry.
Massive salads, hashtag massive salads. I do remember that time. They're the only ones. Cool. Then let's move over to the next supporter. It's, as always, Andrew Potacek. Thoughts on training splits that go over the week, like an 8 or 9 day, then repeat. Have you used them much? Also, do you guys love eating the same day in, day out, or change it up a lot? I'm a big meal prep guy. I'm a big meal prep weekly shop guy. So
I think this is a perfect question for you, because I know you've spoken about it before.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really have to align your training week with the Gregorian calendar week. There's no reason for it. I know that it can be convenient for some and also can be necessary for some. For example, people with a family. I can see when their schedule is like, okay, I bring the kids to school, then I have time in between that time when they are away at school to get my workout in. I can do that. And on the weekends, it's always family time. I don't have any kind of time to do that. Totally fine. I can totally understand that then you have to squeeze it into those kind of into the normal working week. But other than that, you can easily carry it over into the next week. There's no reason for not to do it. Listen to your body. The body will give you the signals. Also, when you're doing something like a push-pull-legs rest, push-pull-legs rest is automatically in an 8-day split. You don't have to stick to those 6 days and then rest. If you are someone who is just working better on 2 days of rest after another, right? Instead of like having those 6 days in a row and then take a rest. But you need to spread out the volume accordingly to get a good session and so, right? So I think there is absolutely a point in not sticking to the Gregorian calendar, and I don't see any kind of reason why you should. No, I see some reason for that, but hardly ever is there a feasible reason to do so.
No, I have a problem. I have a problem.
I take this section just as a teaser for the episode.
I have a problem.
I have a problem.
Serious problem. Where almost, it's a mental struggle for me to break something that I've planned to do, or like not knowing. I like having the same, like I've always thought, I could do it like 3 days on, 1 day off, or something along those lines, or auto-regulate a little bit more and listen to my body somewhat more, and maybe that would be better for me, and I could see why. But I like knowing when my rest day is going to be, and I like having my training days in the week, and like it's all, to some extent, because it's so structured, it holds me back a little bit probably. But I think in the long run, because I'm incredibly consistent with it, it probably helps me a lot and keeps me that structured. So yeah, my problem is that I really struggle to break away from a plan.
That's how I am as well. And also a reason why I'm training the way I do right now is that I can always get my first training sessions of the new week in on a Saturday and Sunday. This is where my training week start, because just due to traffic, Berlin traffic is awful. It's awful. And thus I'm getting, I kind of scheduled my training week to be like that I get my training sessions in on Saturday and Sunday. And now I have 2 rest days in the working week so that I'm not stuck in traffic.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right. So the other question was like, do you like to eat the same meals day in, day out?
I don't know if it's a like, but again, this comes down to my robotic tendency to not give a shit about just eating the same things. The less I have to think about it, generally, the better. So for me at the moment, I can only, if you look at my FitnessPal, looks the same in the week every single day. It's basically mass gainer shake, intra-workout shake, milkshake, hot cross buns, intra-workout shake, whey protein shake, fruit juice, and then I have like some rice or potato with some chicken or salmon and some avocado, and then maybe some like Greek yogurt or something before bed, which is really hard to eat actually.
Yeah,
covered in honey or something.
For me in the past, it was always like super structured, and each and every single day looked the same. Like each and every single day, I was freaking out if it wasn't like as planned. Now it's much more flexible. This is something that I have to bring up. I still have like the 7 to 10 meals I'm always eating, and I don't really deviate from that. And that just like, okay, now in a cutting phase, it even gets more narrow, where it's like I have a handful of things I'm eating. Like the breakfast is always looking the same. The lunch will kind of look different from day to day, but probably will repeat itself at some time throughout the week. And then the dinner will probably also look the same, unless something is coming up. So yeah, it's just like handful, maybe up to 10 meals or so that I'm switching out here and there, but it is very much the same.
It's only for me my weekends that look a little bit different, because typically I go out at some point or eat out, and then things change around. But even then, it's not that different. And during a cutting phase, the only time I'd be like persistent on making sure I'm eating the same day in, day out is really in the last like month before show. That's the only time I'd be like, okay, actually, I'm doing this for a reason, because I want to make sure my kind of sodium is in a vacuum, that sort of thing. Other than that, it's just out of ease.
Oh, cool. Let's move on to the next question. That is from Roman Capella. From past cuts and measurement devices like the old body media, I know my energy expenditure pretty well, and I am in a slight deficit, roughly around 500 kcal per day. But my weight is not really changing over time. So when I am in a cut, how do I know if there is still muscle building or water retention involved when weight is not changing significantly over time? When it is time to reduce calories? When is it time to reduce calories?
So I'd say it's all good and well, kind of having past data and being pretty sure about your energy expenditure and everything along those lines. But there's a lot of variables within energy expenditure that could be impacted, and you maybe aren't always aware of them, and they could subconsciously be happening. And also with food intake, that again, if you're not eating in a vacuum exactly the same, again, that can change and that could have some implications. So I would say unless you're very lean, if you haven't lost over like long term in like a month and the scale weight hasn't come down, like you need to have made an adjustment. And if you have a deadline, I would probably make one after 2 weeks of that at like the latest point. But if you have no deadlines and you're comfortable with what's going on, then maybe do it before it. But if you're just basing it off the fact that, oh, previously I've lost on this amount, just don't take that word for it. Like, be very realistic about your hunger levels. You should be feeling hungry. Be very realistic about the fact that you're holding on to a decent amount of fat. So you should long-term, linearly be losing weight most weeks. Don't kind of just, you may end up just kind of maintaining for an extended period of time, which was just potentially time wasted that could have been spent losing.
Yeah, and just to bring up what we've just talked about in regards to keeping things the same day in, day out, just take a look at your data, whether you are deviating from the plan like significantly, whether there are huge fluctuations in when you eat, when you weigh yourself in, the things that you eat, all these kind of things, whether there is just like a huge daily fluctuation. If not, if you can now rule those, make the adjustment, because it gets less and less likely that it is due to water retentions or something like the muscle building process.
Yeah. Cool.
So Carolina Jorge, or George, I don't know. Or putting it another way, maybe she deleted a question before.
Okay.
I don't know. Putting it another way, if someone deals with sort of I will go to the next one. And Carolina, next time we will go back to the question after we have kind of read all the 3 entries that you put there, because she posted three things. So let's go to Razwan Delibaza. Wow, had no idea you are fluent in German. Question, is there anything to inflammation from foods? This has been a thing several years ago with so-called inflammatory foods. Can you guys delve into that subject? And you said, ich weiß nicht.
Which is, I don't know. I was saying to someone this week, actually, I'm terrible at languages, so I just memorized ich weiß nicht and je ne sais pas, which both know, I don't know. So, in regards to his question, do you have any initial thoughts?
Not really my subject where I'm comfortable in answering that, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what he's necessarily referring to. I'd say probably a question for someone like Gabrielle Fondero. She's kind of gut health educator, as she likes to be called, not an expert. She won't listen to this, but hopefully she'd appreciate that comment. So yeah, I can only think of like FODMAPs. They're a real thing, but they're fermentable. They're not like inflammation. So yeah, inflammatory, I don't know.
Yeah. Go and ask Gabrielle. She's the man for it.
The woman.
The woman. So Fabian Krabs, what would you think of doing just all-out flex of a muscle before you train in the shortened position? Example, do you general warming up, then I need to rephrase it in my head. Do you do general warm-ups, then Sorry, Fabian, I can't read it. I'm terribly sorry, eh?
I read this before because Fabian's my client, and I just saw he posted a question. And
so, do you remember the question?
I know. I was like, I hope Pascal's got some thoughts on this because I'm not really sure what Fabian was asking. So the fact that you couldn't even read it is brilliant.
Sorry.
Does it mean like a maximal
ahead.
contraction of the muscle and then training the muscle in like the shortened position? So I don't really know how, like, tensing a muscle group maximally and then you're going to train it and it's going to be like you can train it in the shortened position. Like, I don't know, maximally tensing your quad and then doing leg extensions. I don't know. Maybe that helps some my muscle connection. I'm not sure. I have no idea.
I don't want to throw. I don't want to throw around with assumptions and then trying to answer a question that hasn't been asked. So let's just move over to the next one.
Let's get Fabian. If you can reword it for next time,
that would be amazing. So Francisco Santiago, if you had a basic home gym setup, rack, bench, dumbbells, what machine, piece of equipment would you invest in?
Ooh, good question.
I know what kind of machine I would definitely get. That is a belt squat machine.
Okay.
Pit Shark.
Interesting.
I know it takes up a lot of space, but this is something that I would love to get my hands on. And yeah.
My initial thought was the Smith machine, just because of how versatile it is. Just like you can do all pressing on it, all rowing, all like squatting. You can do hip hinging on it, and it's a machine, so it makes the axial loading and everything, I don't know, it's a bit more friendly in that regard. So that's the only other one I was thinking. And then immediately comes to mind is someone like Jeff Alberts, who has a leg press in his gym that he recently put in, which I could see the versatility of that as well. But that's since he's already got effectively a Smith in his own gym as well, and a lat pull down. So it'd be good to have a cable. I think a cable rack would be great, and maybe a Smith. A Pit Shark would be so cool. I just never tried one.
I mean, I would assume that when you're doing a home gym, then these are the things that you typically get, like a proper squat rack where you then can also bench in, where you can do the squats in, all these kind of things. But also then maybe a squat rack where there is a pull-up machine or a tower built to it as well. So that you can do seated rows, you can do pull-ups, you can, I don't know, whatever it is, right? Because just having a tower, a cable station is just so versatile as well. But then, if we were to speak like you have covered the basics, I would then, try to get my hands on something like a belt squat or, maybe even the hack squat machine, but that takes even more space.
Yeah. Damn, that'd be really cool. This is always... Because are you gonna do a home gym? I think you said you were thinking about it. No.
Okay. We don't have enough space for that. Not with the house we bought.
For me, it was always a dream. Like I'd always thought I want a home gym, but then after I'd thought about it a bit more, I was like, but I quite like going to the gym if there's if a nice environment, if I know people there. Which I mean, I might not always. So sometimes it's not great, but when there is people there, it's nice. And then a lot of the time, just the gyms have such a variety of equipment that it's kind of nice to be able to, as a bodybuilder particularly, to be able to have that. I can see as a powerlifter, like, just train at home. Like, that'd be sweet. But yeah.
Same goes for me. And also then after a while I was like, okay, if I really want to have a home gym and we are not buying a house because we haven't found a proper house where I could build one, that is just an idiotic thing. Is like, this is a luxury item that I would get for myself. And if I don't have the space for it, I'd rather have a house together with my family where I can't build a home gym instead of trying desperately to find a house, never end up buying a house, and then live in just this apartment here. Right? I mean, it's something that I just gave up like without hesitating.
Yeah. I think as long as you've got a gym that's relatively convenient close by that has decent enough equipment, like it's always, I mean, just a commercial gym is always probably going to have better equipment than what you can actually get at home because it's just got the space for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Then Johnny Galanudis, If you need to deload after a minicut, how do you structure going back into a calorie surplus again along with a new massing mesocycle? Would you deload at maintenance or deload straight back into a surplus? Dr. Mike always mentions jump straight into a massing post minicut for nutrient hypertrophic sensitivity, but with a deload sandwich in. How would it look like? What would it look like?
It's really interesting because I can see how frustrating it can be from Mike and even from our standpoint when we say things, but also from a consumer standpoint, because there's little details that sometimes get missed. So I think I can speak for Mike because I think he's maybe have covered this before, but it's always assuming a deload at maintenance essentially afterwards. So you don't jump into the surplus during the deload because there's just no need for it. It would probably just not be super productive. It can act as a bit of a maintenance, and then straight into the surplus comes when you do your hypertrophy training. So the way I always try and speak about it is you couple your training and your nutrition together synergistically. So if it's hypertrophy and you're in the mesocycle and you're training hard, it's either cutting or massing. In a deload, in general, maintenance. Obviously, we've already said we like in a massing phase to go through mass then maintenance, but for most time it's at maintenance, and even in a cut, like there might be deloads where you end up having to go through continue the cut, which it might be closer to maintenance though, but just think of it as maintenance. So it's always close to maintenance if not maintenance, and then obviously a primer or a low volume phase, that's entirety is just maintenance intake. So hopefully that allows a lot of people to think whenever those comments come that they're like, okay, yeah, deloads are maintenance or close to.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. So the next question is from John Jones, and I would just say we save this one for the next week as well, because that is relating to Fabian's question. So
so he knew what it was.
Yeah, and we are actually over an hour already, but we can still take Drew's question. So Drew Middlebrooks, is there any reason to be concerned about arsenic content in rice as far as general health goes?
I have no reason to believe so. I've never worried. It's not something I've ever heard of particularly or thought about particularly. How about you?
I don't think that this... So, of course, this is once again totally outside of my scope of practice, and I'm not very well versed in that kind of field when it comes to these kind of regulatory systems, health systems, or the differences between, for example, the EU and US are quite different. So I would assume that EU, the regulatory system, at least when it comes to these regulations around food, are very strict, very strict. So at least in the EU, I wouldn't really worry about that. I don't know how it is in the US though, because especially there, when it also comes to, for example, meat and what you are, what is accepted and what is allowed there is totally differing to what is allowed in the EU. That's also why that trade agreement never took place or never was agreed upon, because of those differences in the health or nutritional regulatory system. So yeah, I can't really say anything much about that.
It's just making me think of, I know this is like one of the things your mother tells you. It's like, once you kind of cook rice, cool it, don't heat it again, or it's like in that cooling process, that's when something can go a bit off or bad. But I know personally, I can remember I did this for a few years where I would bulk cook rice and I would reheat it and I had no issues. And I'm just saying that from a personal
magically decreased the calorie content by 50%.
Oh God, all of that. It's so, I mean...
you still know that one? When this was around, when everyone was like, yeah, because of starches and the reformation of starches.
It gets... You could, if you were to really go into those details, you could really try and like manipulate your diet to like just lose every little bit of calorie you can in different places, like with the like different fibers, and they don't have the same calories as a full carb. But it overcomplicates the issue. That's minutia that you just simply don't need to worry about, because by tracking bigger things like your body weight, where that's trending, your calorie intake, and having a consistent way of doing so, you don't need to worry about those details. They kind of wash away. I can see how people get really stressed about them. I would have been that person. I would have been like, holy shit, like I should have been tracking this as 2 instead of 1 or something like that.
No, cool. That is it for this week, guys.
Awesome.
Nothing to plug, I think.
No.
No.
The only thing I just had one thing I was going to say, just because it's been on my mind. But if anyone ever has any suggestions for the podcast, because people make great suggestions sometimes and we use them and they're brilliant. So if anyone has any feedback, any suggestions, critical or positive, always welcomed. If you ever want to review the podcast over on iTunes, that's always really well received. We never ask for it, so if you ever do want to do that, it's like a massive thing for us. So yeah, just feedback would be awesome, because like we always say, we're trying to make this podcast always be one of the highest quality and best out there. So we can only do that if we're pleasing you guys who are listening, especially the loyal ones who end up catching us blab on about penises
every single week.
Every week recently. They must think something's wrong.
I mean, anyway. I'm leaning out now, so I will.
I thought you were going to say you're getting a semi.
What? Holy shit! We should end the show here now.
Yeah, we really should. When it's hitting me.
Yeah. So, talk to you soon, guys.